Welcome to Minggu Belajar bersama Mentari Teachers Academy with the topic Adapting from Face-to-Face Teaching to Successful Online Learning, presented by Mentari Group and Mentari Teachers Academy. This is a teacher training and development program that is consistent and sustainable, created to be a platform for educators across Indonesia to share and grow together. And for 2 hours ahead, me, Ocha, will lead this agenda. Before we start our agenda, let me inform you of some regulations for our event. The first one is, the trainer will start deliver materials at 2 p.m. and make sure you have a stable internet connection. Next, while the trainer delivering materials, your microphone will be off or muted. Next, only the trainer can deliver the material. Next, we will have 2 Q&A in the middle and at the end of the session. So if you have any question, please type on the chat box, and you can also speak to our trainer in the Q&A session by using raise hand feature. If you use a laptop or computer, you can click on participant, then there will be a raise hand icon. Or if you use a cell phone, you can click on the 3 dots in the lower right corner. There is more icon, then select the raise hand feature. Next, the trainer will give a chance to the participants to ask by activating participants' audio. And at the end of the session, I will also share a link for downloading today's presentation materials. Educators, before we start the event, please fill the attendance form through the link displayed on the screen or use the link on the chat box. Silakan Bapak Ibu Guru untuk mengisi formulir kehadiran terlebih dahulu yang linknya sudah tertera ya di chat box. Silakan bisa diisi dan mohon diperhatikan dalam penulisan nama lengkap juga alamat email sehingga tidak terjadi kesalahan penulisan. Silakan Bapak Ibu. Baik Bapak Ibu, ini adalah gambaran dari peserta yang hadir pada sesi hari ini. Luar biasa sekali, ada 15 kota. Jadi di sini adalah para pendidik ya, atau para guru yang datang dari 15 kota yang ada di Indonesia. Luar biasa sekali, ada dari Bandung, dari Kalimantan, dari Makassar, bahkan dari Papua. Luar biasa. And the most interesting part is our trainer, Mr. Fabio, is now joining us from Brazil. Wow! The time difference is 10 hours apart from us. Luar biasa. Boleh tepuk tangan virtualnya ya, Bapak Ibu? Baik, luar biasa. Dan jangan lupa juga untuk menyalakan kamera, Bapak Ibu, kamera atau videonya ya, supaya kita bisa saling melihat wajah satu sama lain. Baik, terima kasih banyak. And educators, now I would like to invite Ms. Iren Suryanto as head of Mentari Teachers Academy to deliver opening remarks. Please welcome Ms. Iren Suryanto.
Thank you, Ocha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Ms.
Ibu Bapak, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, welcome to Indonesia, Fabio, far away from Brazil over there. So thank you for spending your time joining us with 10 hours behind us there, so early in the morning. Before we start, please allow me to introduce all the team who supports us today in our session. Besides Ocha as the moderator, we also have Ludi as the event manager for today. We also have Cindy, the administrator. And also we have Rido, the operator for all today's session. Thank you so much all for your hard work and supporting us. Let me share my screen first. Ibu dan Bapak, please allow me to speak in Bahasa to give these opening remarks. Just an introduction about Mentari Teachers Academy and how we involve in our activities to support teachers all over Indonesia. Ibu dan Bapak, Mentari Teachers Academy telah hadir sejak kurang lebih 6 tahun yang lalu. Sejak kehadirannya, kami telah menyiapkan visi dan misi untuk mendukung pendidikan di Indonesia, di mana fokus utama kami adalah belajar bersama dengan para guru yang ada di Indonesia, sehingga para guru insan pendidikan akan makin kompeten dan profesional di bidangnya. Untuk konsisten menjalani semua visi dan misi tersebut, kami telah menyiapkan termasuk pada situasi pandemi saat ini, kegiatan yang kami sebut Minggu Belajar bersama Mentari Teachers Academy. Pada bulan ini telah dimulai sejak hari Selasa lalu hingga nanti pada hari Sabtu 29 Agustus 2020 dengan 10 ragam topik yang bisa diikuti. Keragaman topik itu telah kami susun juga dalam serangkaian materi Minggu Belajar bersama Mentari Teachers Academy hingga nanti di bulan November 2020. Setiap bulannya ada 10 topik dengan fokus-fokus yang berbeda pada setiap bulannya. Untuk bulan ini dan bulan depan, kami menyiapkan serangkaian topik, 10 topik tadi, berkaitan dengan implementasi mengajar. Pada bulan Oktober ada 10 topik berkaitan dengan penilaian dan evaluasi secara online. Sementara di bulan November nanti ditambah mengenai project-based learning. Ibu dan Bapak, kami menyadari bahwa professional development, pelatihan dan pengembangan adalah satu serangkaian kegiatan yang perlu dibuat secara menyeluruh dan komprehensif. Untuk itu, keseluruhan program telah kami rangkai dalam program yang disebut 100 Hari Transformasi Guru, dengan fokus dan tujuan para guru, insan pendidikan akan kompeten, cakap, berkarakter. Dari sini kami tetap mengacu pada ketentuan pemerintah pada perundangan yang dipakai sesuai dengan Undang-Undang Nomor 14 Tahun 2005. Pada undang-undang ini disebutkan ada 4 kompetensi yang perlu terus dikembangkan, diasah, dan makin dikuatkan. Maka 4 kompetensi ini, kompetensi kepribadian, pedagogis, sosial, dan profesional menjadi salah satu acuan yang perlu dikembangkan dalam program 100 Hari Transformasi Guru. Di luar 4 kompetensi tadi, kami menyadari bahwa kami juga perlu melihat apa yang saat ini dibutuhkan, apa realisasi yang sungguh kita hadapi. Untuk itu kami menyesuaikan modul-modul tersebut dengan adanya kebutuhan yang memang menjadi satu kebutuhan di depan mata. Seperti hal ini, hari ini juga materi yang kita akan sampaikan dan ikuti bersama, bagaimana sebetulnya mengenai pengelolaan online dan offline, bagaimana beradaptasi pada pembelajaran dengan sistem online. Kami juga menyiapkan serangkaian materi untuk bisa melakukan informasi dan juga mendalami mengenai keterampilan abad 21, the 21st century skills. Lalu bagaimana kami mengalokasikan waktu, membagi waktu selama program 100 Hari Transformasi Guru. Mengapa perlu 100 hari? Ibu dan Bapak, seperti tadi saya sampaikan, fokusnya adalah bagaimana kita akan makin menguatkan, mengokohkan diri untuk makin kompeten dan profesional. Maka kompetensi profesional mendapatkan fokus utama. Dengan mayoritas jam pembelajaran ada pada kompetensi tersebut. Di dalamnya, kami menguatkan kompetensi bahasa Inggris dari setiap peserta. Sehingga salah satu kekuatan dalam program ini adalah nantinya guru-guru akan mampu mengajar matematika dan sains dalam bahasa Inggris. Untuk itu, kami menurunkan 4 kompetensi yang menjadi acuan, kemudian diatur dalam 3 modul pembelajaran. Modul dasar, lanjut, dan modul mahir. Setiap modul kami susun materi-materi yang diselaraskan dengan setiap kompetensi dan secara bertahap mengalami peningkatan, pengukuhan, dan makin bertumbuh. Sehingga pada akhirnya guru akan semakin menyadari, semakin bangga sebagai profesi seorang guru. Ibu dan Bapak, bila pertanyaannya adalah bagaimana sekolah dapat ikut serta dalam program ini, maka ada 2 cara bila sekolah ingin bergabung dalam program ini. Cara yang pertama, tentu saja ini adalah program professional development, sebuah pelatihan bagi pengembangan profesi. Sekolah dapat mengalokasikan, menyiapkan anggaran, dan meminta para guru bergabung pada program Professional Development 100 Hari Transformasi Guru. Sementara, program ini tidak hanya diikuti oleh para guru yang sudah mengajar. Kami juga membuka kesempatan bagi tenaga-tenaga muda yang ingin menjadi guru, fresh graduate. Dalam hal ini, bila sekolah menginginkan adanya tambahan tenaga SDM untuk menjadi guru di institusinya, sekolah-sekolah dapat memberikan sponsorship, dapat memberikan beasiswa, sehingga para fresh graduate yang bergabung akan dapat menuntaskan pelatihannya dan kemudian akan bersama-sama mengembangkan sekolah di tempat ibu dan bapak berada. Ibu dan Bapak, kami menyadari, khususnya di situasi saat ini, di mana setiap sekolah pasti memiliki prioritas yang berbeda. Setiap sekolah juga memiliki pengaturan, alokasi waktu, availability tenaga pengajar yang berbeda-beda dan perlu diatur. Untuk itu, kami juga menyadari pelatihan seyogyanya bisa menjadi fleksibel. Fleksibilitas ini dapat diambil dalam bentuk professional development yang disebut Teacher Development with Mentari Teachers Academy. Programnya adalah program in-house training yang akan kami berikan dalam platform online. Seperti tadi saya sampaikan bahwa program-program adalah yang kami sudah siapkan secara menyeluruh dan komprehensif. Program-program meskipun saya menyampaikan fleksibel dapat dilakukan di tempat institusi ibu dan bapak. Pengaturan waktu yang fleksibel, tetapi semuanya tetap mengacu pada program yang continuous dan berkesinambungan. Program-program ini dapat terdiri dari beberapa mata ajar yang memang menjadi kebutuhan utama di sebuah sekolah. Ada materi bahasa Inggris, ada materi matematika, juga ada materi mengenai pengembangan atau filosofi pendidikan. Keseluruhan program ini diberikan dalam bentuk short course, sekitar 8 jam bagi setiap materinya. Sehingga dapat saya rangkum bahwa pada dasarnya Mentari Teachers Academy tetap mencoba untuk menghidupi dan menghayati visi dan misi yang telah ada sejak kami hadir. Kami menyiapkan program setiap bulan lewat Minggu Belajar bersama Mentari Teachers Academy. Program-program dibuat secara menyeluruh, progresif, komprehensif, dan menyiapkan secara paripurna lewat program 100 Hari Transformasi Guru. Program yang lebih fleksibel dapat diambil lewat in-house training dalam program Teacher Development with Mentari Teachers Academy. Bila ibu dan bapak ingin atau perlu mendapatkan penjelasan lebih lanjut, ibu dan bapak dapat menghubungi saya atau rekan-rekan yang ibu bapak kenal di Mentari Books Indonesia Group. Kami akan dengan senang hati membantu ibu dan bapak. Akhir kata, I really hope that you will enjoy the session. Thank you so much. And then Fabio, later, happy teaching for you. Mbak Ocha, terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Iren Serianto, for the opening remarks. Educators, please welcome Mr. Fabio Coelho. Hello, Mr. Fabio. I'm sorry, you are still muted. Yes.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my second training workshop with Mentari. The first one I actually did a few weeks ago when I was still in Indonesia. But because I have family in 2 countries now, I have family both in the United States and in Brazil. I'm here visiting my family in Brazil for a while and just spending some time here before I go back to my real home in the United States. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to start right away with the slides to you so that you can see we can follow the presentation. And so the topic today that we're going to talk about is from face-to-face to online teaching and learning. I condensed the title here so it could fit on the slide well, but it's the same as the long title that you have gotten. And why are we talking about this topic? Why is it a very good idea for Mentari to address this topic? Because as educators these days, this is probably what we've been struggling with the most, right? How do we turn all of our teaching from face-to-face to online all of a sudden? And how much of it can we adapt? How much of it can we not? And how do we adapt it? So I would like to say, this is something that I really love to say when I do training workshops with teachers. I really want to approach this event today, not just as someone who comes here, oh, let me teach you what to do. No, my main job, my main profession is teacher. I've been teaching since I started working professionally. Yes, I've done online trainings. Yes, I've done physical trainings. Yes, I've developed materials. I've done quite a few things because of how long I've been teaching. But what keeps me grounded, what keeps me thinking about how to do things is my role as a teacher. So I'm really addressing you today as a teacher. And I hope that whatever we share here today can be beneficial to you, right? So let me give you some introduction, a little bit on my background. So I am Brazilian American. I have family in both countries. My home base is in the United States, but every now and then I come here just to see my family, see how they're doing, my Brazilian part of the family, of course. My training or my education is on linguistics and education. So I am a certified public school teacher in California, in the state of California in the United States. And I also did some studies, some graduate studies on the field of linguistics, because one of my interests in bilingual education and linguistics is academic writing, how non-native speakers develop their writing abilities. That's one of my focuses as a professional. And among all my work experience, I think my experience that is important for this workshop is, well, I've worked as a bilingual educator and a writing specialist in the United States. In Indonesia, I worked for a few years as an English language fellow, both in Pekanbaru, in Riau, and in Semarang. And then I taught at an international school. I worked as a teacher and a coordinator. And my most recent experience was in China, where I worked as an English language assessment. So I'm trying to bring some of this experience here today so that we can exchange some ideas and hopefully you will find it useful. And our interaction today will be mostly on Zoom, right? I know Ocha has already reminded you. So remember to keep your microphones muted when you're not talking, but unmute them when you are talking. And we are going to use some other platforms today. We're going to use Mentimeter a little bit, and I'm going to be showing you a few pages on Google Classroom as well. But remember to always make comments, answer some questions too on the chat box. You're always welcome. Ocha is going to be helping me today. She has already been helping me a lot, actually. And she'll be paying attention to your questions. And whenever there's something really crucial and important, she knows she can interrupt me and bring the questions up, because it's important that we address issues as they come. So without further ado, let's look at the objectives. So today we're going to be experimenting with pedagogical tools or teaching tools that work for online teaching and learning. This is the big question that we all have, right? How do we teach online effectively, right? To some of us, this may come easily, but to others, this may come with some difficulty. And what are the advantages and the disadvantages, the pros and cons of synchronous, asynchronous, and hybrid online teaching and learning? And if you're not familiar with these terms, you will learn them in 5 minutes. We'll cover them right away. And we're going to also explore some online tools to make our classes more interactive, to make our online experience more interactive. And so the plan is going to be this one. I'm going to start with a presentation, a short presentation that I'm going to try to keep to no longer than probably 15 minutes. And then we're going to do a couple of walkthroughs. What is a walkthrough? A walkthrough is I'm going to walk you through a few lessons in 3 different types. A synchronous lesson, which is a real-time lesson that you could do online. An asynchronous lesson, which is one that we do not in real time. And then we're going to do what actually all of us should be doing when we teach online. How do we mix synchronous and asynchronous activities? Because if you look at what the best educators are doing online, the most successful ones are doing hybrids, a mix of both. And we're going to learn how to do that. And if we have some time at the end, actually, after we do the walkthroughs, we're going to be discussing throughout them, and we're going to do a Q&A session after the walkthroughs. And then depending on how much time we have at the end, we're going to cover some resources, maybe some apps, some websites that you can use to make your classes more interesting online. That's the plan, so that you all know what's happening. And if you have any questions about the plan, just throw them to me. But before, the first thing I would like to do, because as a teacher, I learned something really crucial a long time ago. The same way that before you teach something, you kind of try to assess how much your students know about the topic so that you're not just repeating information. I would like you to tell me in a quick survey that I'm going to share with you, what are your attitudes and feelings about online teaching and learning? And this is important because most of what I'm going to do today will be about that. We'll be addressing all those needs. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. Okay? And all I want you to do is this. I would like you to use your computer or use your headphone and go and follow the instructions at the top. Go to www.menti.com. And then as soon as you go onto this website, it will ask you to enter a code. And the code is the code that you see on the screen, 1325813. And then just answer the questions. Okay, so the first question you have is a scale question, and you just have to read the statements and express how much you agree and how much you disagree with them. And after this one, there is another question that I'm going to show you right after this one, which is, there are actually 2 questions. I think I cannot move them now. Let me just get away from the full screen so I can show you the second question, and then I'll put the full screen again. So the second question will be similar to this one, and will be, how effective do you think you are as an online teacher? You don't have to enter 2 codes. You just enter that code and you will answer both questions. So how effective are you as an online teacher is the second one. This is just your opinion. Do you think you are very effective? Do you think you are effective enough or not very effective? Again, nobody will know who you are. Those are anonymous surveys. I just want to get a sense of how you feel about teaching online. There you go. You have some people already answering. Let me go back to the first slide of the Mentimeter
Yeah,
platform.
just want to let the participants know, Mr. Fabio, the link is
Sure.
also been shared on the chat box, so they can also
Awesome.
access this. from the chat
Awesome,
box.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I will spend just 30 seconds on this now because I know people will be answering as we go. Keep on answering, and then I'm going to move on with the presentation. And maybe in 5-10 minutes, we go back to this again and see what most people have said. But as of now, as we can see here, so I feel comfortable teaching online. So we have almost like halfway, but a little bit on the positive side, that most people agree that they feel comfortable teaching online. I would say almost half of us here prefer to teach online. It seems to be going down a little bit and up. It keeps on changing, but it's not as strong as the number of people who feel comfortable. And it looks like a little bit over the majority of us agrees that teaching online has made us better professional. And I kind of understand that because even though it's difficult to teach online, it is a new skill that we're learning. It is definitely a new skill. And it surely makes us better professionals. And let's just take a quick glance very quickly at what the answers have been on the second slide so far. So, so the first one here, the winning answer is most of us so far thinks that we are effective enough. Most of us think, right? And a smaller group, actually, it's kind of tied, and there's a competition going on here before very effective and not very effective. That's very interesting, right? And this is a good exercise of reflection for us educators, right? It's actually very important. I've taught many classes before that I looked back on and then said, well, this class was not very effective. And I've taught many classes before as an educator that I looked at and then I saw, well, that class was very effective or was effective enough. So it's good for us to have that sense. So keep on answering. I will move on with my slides. And in a couple of minutes, I will go back to the Mentimeter slides and I will show us here what the answers have been altogether for most of us. So let me put the slides back. Okay, here we are. So before we continue actually with the presentation of the slides, I would like to also do something that I plan on doing here throughout the day. I'm going to call on some participants to share their opinions and to share their perspectives. And this is not to put people on the spot. This is not to catch you. You're not paying attention. No, that's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that the perspective that we hear today is not just my perspective, that we're actually a group, a collective group of people who can teach and learn from each other, okay? So let me get a few here. I see one participant here, Jennifer Somarti. Would you like to, let me ask you a question here, if you can unmute yourself and answer real quickly. What has been the biggest challenge for you of teaching online?
The students' attention, actually. While the teacher teaching and some of the students are daydreaming or not concentrate or not focus on the teacher's instruction.
Okay, thank you very much for your participation. And then you have Mrs. Juliana. Would you like to answer the same question for us? What has been the biggest challenge for you teaching online?
The biggest challenge is when the lack of the attention from parents to help the student, and also the communication way, the signal here come and go, and this make a frustrated for the teacher and for the student.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for participation. So I think those are some of the concerns that most of us have had, right? Sometimes it's hard to keep student attention or focus as we're teaching online. That's one issue for sure. Technology is key to being able to teach online, because if you don't have a connection, how can we teach, right? If a stable connection. And parent participation, especially one of the things that teachers have told me, at least the teachers that I've been able to talk to in Indonesia, in other countries, that I've been able to, teachers I've been able to connect with, is that the younger the kids are, sometimes the more you need parents to step in and help out, especially with technical issues. that can be challenging. So hopefully, what I'm going to cover here today will give you some ideas, at least a different perspective on how to do things. Okay, and feel free to tell me later also in your feedback what you think is going to work for you and what you think may not, because this is also important. So let me do a quick presentation here before we look at the walkthroughs and the different possibilities that we have for developing lessons. Basically, teaching online is also about making choices pedagogically, or making choices about how we teach. This may seem obvious, the main point that online teaching is not in-class teaching. But I do believe, and from my own experience also, that sometimes the difficulties we have teaching online is that sometimes we tend to do the same things we do in the classroom online. And the more you try to make your class online look like a regular class, sometimes the more likely you are to not succeed, because the environment and the platform are very different. They're very, very different, okay? And what you see, when you look at scholars today, especially specialists on online teaching and learning, what they suggest is that successful online learning should be a combination, a hybrid of two things: synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. Synchronous means in real time. Asynchronous means not in real time. And also, you are more likely to succeed if you maximize interaction. Again, as you can see here, one of the things that I'm trying to do as we move on is to add discussions, get people's opinions, because the more we interact, the better. And of course, in a class, because there's a back and forth, like a ping pong style back and forth between the teacher and the students, this interaction can be even bigger than in a workshop like this one. So what is synchronous learning? Again, synchronous learning or teaching involves real-time interaction, right? What we are doing now is a synchronous event. We are doing this in real time. Everybody's logged on. It doesn't matter that I'm in Brazil, that you are in Indonesia, or in different parts of Indonesia. This platform allows us to do this workshop in real time. Advantages. Real time brings more engagement. Real time makes learning more dynamic. Why? Because if I try to teach a concept and then 5 people ask me a question, maybe that's a signal that my concept wasn't well explained. So I can explain it again. So there's a certain dynamism to it, right? I can react to things in real time. And I can also go deeper or not so deep depending on the reaction of my students. So for example, if I'm teaching a lesson in real time and I find out, wow, my students already know this concept. So I can explore more advanced aspects of my concept. I can make adjustments because I am doing it synchronously. Those are some of the advantages. What are the disadvantages? It's a rigid schedule, right? For example, I'm in Brazil now. It's probably around 4:25 a.m. It doesn't matter that it's 4:25 a.m. I'm online. I have to be online. So there's no discussion. The time is the time. It's like going to class, right? You set the time. You have to make it. And also, as some of you have already pointed out, technical difficulties. Because the reality today is that we don't have the same internet everywhere. You know, sometimes even there's a big difference in connection between you and your neighbor, right? In your neighborhood or in your area. So those can be difficulties that can really make or break online or synchronous learning. What about asynchronous learning? Well, asynchronous learning means it's happening not in real time, and there's no real-time interaction. And this happens when sometimes you give assignments for students to do, and they have to complete on their own time. So if I give an assignment for my students, they say, hey, complete this at home, and we'll check it tomorrow in class. Each student will do that assignment at a different time. That's what makes it asynchronous. What are some of the pros? It's flexible, because students don't have to do it at that time. They can do it when it's best for them. Students can pace themselves. Okay, students who can do it quickly can finish and be done. Students who need more time can take more time. So students work at their own paces. It can be more affordable to students. Why do I say that? Because many of our students are using cell phone data, or we call it pulsa in Indonesia, right? And so sometimes pulsa can be cheaper at certain times of the day. So it could be more affordable to students to be online for half an hour in the evening rather than being online for half an hour during the day. It could be more affordable for students. And it's also more convenient. Because if a student has a class at a time when many people are using the internet at home, that can affect the quality of teaching and learning. So they can choose to do it when people are not using their internet at home. That's what makes it convenient. And not only that, but also the possibility for them to choose their time. Some of the disadvantages. Well, they are not learning in a group, they're learning in isolation by themselves. Students who tend to be apathetic, who tend to be not so motivated, they're not going to be too motivated to finish the tasks, right? So that's the problem of asynchronous learning to some students. They're not motivated to finish the tasks, okay? So, but notice here that each one of those styles of teaching and learning online has their pro and their con, right? And so they're not necessarily better than each other. It depends on what your goal is. Okay. So how do we maximize interaction and engagement? Well, when you are, it depends on the speed of your connection. It depends on how many people you have, and it depends on whether you're doing this synchronously or asynchronously, right? In this case, how many people you have in your class. So for example, here we are using chats. I'm not using breakout rooms today because when you have more than 25, maybe 30 people max, I don't think breakout rooms are very effective. But if you were a smaller group, I would be using breakout rooms today. I could use that. It really depends on how comfortable you are and how young your students are to be able to handle breakout rooms, and also how easy it is for you to do it, depending on connection and all that. But we are using also screen share, and because this is not a class, I'm not going to be using the Zoom whiteboard, but I could be using the Zoom whiteboard if I was teaching math or some other concept. I could be using that. For asynchronous teaching, how can I maximize interaction? Well, the students cannot talk to me or to themselves in real time, but they can post comments on social media. I can make it that part of assignment. You have to finish a task and post a comment. That could be part of my lesson. Students will be posting their comments at different times, but they would be posting them. And you can check, because you can check if they posted or not. They can get back to you or to each other using email. They can provide feedback by using surveys. And like I'm using Mentimeter here, this is a way to provide feedback. You could give them surveys to fill out and give you feedback on their learning. And also for things like speaking and listening, you could be using audio and video files. Today online, it's quite easy for you to record audio video files without too much software on your computer and send to your teacher or give a link to your class or share the link with the class. And I'm going to show you some of these websites or apps that we've been using. Okay, so those are some of the ways that we're going to maximize interaction. So before we get to the lesson, let me just show you quickly here the results of our survey. And so on Mentimeter, so we have here, so the winner here is, most of us here believe that we are effective enough, and that's good. And the second one, not very effective. Some of us, a smaller group here among us, seems to be struggling a little bit. And a smaller chunk of the group, very effective. Okay, so that's good. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you for sharing your reflection with the rest of us. And let's see here what happened in terms of the first question, what the answers have been. Let me make it bigger again. And so we have, so 2.8 out of 5, a maximum point here is 5, right? The strongly agree would be a 5. So 2.8 believe that they feel comfortable teaching online, or actually they don't believe, they feel comfortable teaching online. 2.3 actually prefer to teach online, and 3.1 the strongest feeling here. Teaching online has made me a better professional. Yeah, I would definitely agree with the last one as well. Okay, good job and thank you. And we have here the results of our survey. So before I move back to the slides, let me show you what we're going to be doing today. So the first walkthrough I'm going to be showing you is a walkthrough or a sample of, I don't know if you can see this now. Let me see here. Let me try to share. Okay, is a sequence, a synchronous sequence, a real-time sequence. So what did I do? This is a chapter that I used a few weeks ago. This is a chapter that some teachers in Indonesia use at a particular school. This is the textbook that they use. So what did I do as a teacher? What did I take on as a challenge? I took a certain portion of this unit and I tried to adapt it to online teaching. Why did I take just a portion and not the whole unit? Because a unit like this is usually not really taught in only one class. Usually you spend maybe 3 or 4 classes, if not more, teaching a whole unit, okay? So the title of the unit is We're Going on Holiday. And so we have some pre-unit activities here to activate prior knowledge. We have vocabulary activities, grammar activities, speaking. And in the middle of the unit, you have a text. So I decided to adapt this reading comprehension lesson to an online lesson, to a synchronous lesson. Why? Because reading comprehension sometimes can be a challenge to teachers, right? How do you adapt reading comprehension activities? So my goal was, okay, let me look at this text and let me adapt this text and all the activities around it. So just to show you here, and you can actually download this, Ocha is going to put a link to you. So if you want to download this PDF, you can, either now or later, it doesn't matter. So if you look at the text here, it's called Welcome to Cape Town, the city that has everything. So there's a short text. Before the text, you have sort of like a prior knowledge activation activity. Okay, it's asking here, what is the capital of South Africa? It's almost like a trivia, right? And then second, read the text and check your answers. Find an adjective in the text to describe those things, and then the beaches, the shopping, settings, and climate, which is trying to get students to interact with the text already. And then there is a vocabulary activity. And I'm just showing you so you can have an idea of what I had to adapt. And a speaking activity, so I have a few vocabulary activities, and then a speaking activity and pronunciation activity, and then that's it for the text. And then we go on to a different section of the unit. So, okay, so if you're going to teach a unit like this, like a reading comprehension unit online, and think about the reading comprehension units that you have taught. Think about this question for 1 minute before I show you the sequence. What are some strategies that you have done online, or what are some strategies that you have used to teach reading comprehension online? Think about your own teaching, and I'm going to ask a few volunteers to share with us. If you want to share, you can just write, I would like to share on the chat box, and I'll call you. But let me get some volunteers here. So I can see here, Fridaus, would you like to share with us? What are some strategies you have used to teach reading comprehension online, if you have taught it?
Okay, thank you. In my institution, we use like learning management system, and we share the slide. So we show the text in a slide, and then after that, we provide the participants with some quizzes. So they have to answer the quiz. It's like that. Mm.
So do you read the text online? Do the students read the text online? Do they read it before they get online? How do you do that?
They read it online, I mean, real time.
Okay, so thank you so much. So let me see here. Anybody else would like to participate before I call on someone? See here. So let's see, Shendi Liweka. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. I'll do my best, okay? How have you taught reading comprehension online so far?
Yeah, but what I have taught in my class is sometimes, but not always, is sometimes that I give the text prior first, so they read by themselves first. And then after that, we discuss together about the difficult words that they find after they reading. And then some other times I also do shared reading, reading together. I share the text on my screen and then ask them to read aloud one by one.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. So we've seen a couple of examples that you can do reading comprehension online, right? And again, if you ask me what's the best strategy, well, it depends on your goal pedagogically. It depends on whether or not it works with your students. What I tell teachers when I'm doing training sessions is the most effective strategy is the one that works, right? And because something can be very effective in my class, but you may try it and notice and realize that it's not really effective for you. But let's see some other examples here, some other ways that we can do that. So what did I do? So I got this classic reading comprehension and vocabulary activity, and I adapted it from those pages, this book chapter. And so the walkthrough, the sequence of a lesson that I'm going to show you now is a possible sequence you could do for reading comprehension. Again, that would depend on the unit and the topic, but this is what I've done for this unit, okay? So of course, if I'm teaching a class, I would share my objectives with my students to identify the main facts in an informative text, to determine the meaning of new words in context, and to share their favorite holiday activities in speaking and writing. This is my goal with the lesson. So when I developed my activities, I had to have my objectives clear, like what do I want by adapting this lesson? What do I want the students to be able to do? Online or offline, it doesn't matter. Those are my objectives. So depending on the platform, this will look different. So the first thing I planned for my lesson is I would start with a warm-up, okay? And don't worry about having to write this down. You will get a copy of the presentation, and this particular part of the presentation is all there for you. All the slides are there, okay? This particular part of it. So you get a copy of this. So I would use my Zoom chat and just ask them, okay, and have them answer in my Zoom chat, how many countries in Africa can you name? Because before I ask them to read about a country in Africa, I would like to know what they know about Africa, if they even know that South Africa or Cape Town exists, because that's the country and the city that are featured in my text. So I would start by activating their prior knowledge, and I would probably show them a map of South Africa and show where it's located on the map, what the flag looks like, just to get the students interested in the topic of the lesson, okay? Because by doing this, I would show them that, well, now we're going to read a text about South Africa and try to get them interested in it. The next thing I would do, I adapted the trivia from the textbook. Those are the same questions from the textbook. What did I do? I put them on my slides to make them more interesting to students, right? Before I asked them to read the text, I would say, okay, now try to answer these questions. Try to guess the answer without looking at your book. Again, because this gets my students to start thinking about some of the language, some of the information covered in the text. And when they read it, it'll probably be a little easier for them to understand. What are some other advantages of this type of trivia? Well, if the students don't know what words such as capital or population, etc. are, they can ask those questions before you get to the text, so that it will be easier for them to interact with the text and read the text later. And even if they don't know names of places like Cape Town, Pretoria, Johannesburg, you can actually introduce those terms in the trivia so that when they read them, it'll be more natural for them to interact with the terms, okay? So this is the advantage of a trivia, for example. And now I'm gonna start going off my slides, off my Zoom a little bit. You saw in the book that there is an activity about holiday activities, right? This is from the book. So as part of the book lesson, my students are supposed to know all this vocabulary. So how did I do this? Okay, I want them to do this online. Instead of just asking them to open their book pages and answer the questions or try to guess, I went online, and there is a really interesting platform that you can find online called WordWall. And how does WordWall work? Okay, it works like this. I basically, I got the PDF. I took 5 minutes. I took screenshots of every single one of the activities. And then I can give this link to my students online, and they can play. This is like a game. So they have to guess which one of these activities or pictures shows the activity that they read. Sailing, they can click here. Okay. And then I can move on, and they'll move on to the next activity. Or I can move on by myself by using the arrows, or the students can move on by themselves. So which one is sunbathing? There you go. This turns the activity, a vocabulary activity that can be boring on the book, into a game. And it makes it more interesting to students. And when they're doing this, of course, they're not listening to me. They're actually practicing. So for example, you can tell me now, which one corresponds to hiking, A, B, or C, or D? Go ahead, a few volunteers. Unmute yourself. Which one is hiking?
C.
Anyone? C, there you go. Okay, next one. Which picture shows kayaking?
Kayaking C.
C, there you go. Okay, so which one shows windsurfing?
C.
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 C again. Okay, C again. There you go. Which one shows camping?
A.
Hey, there you go. Okay, so you could play like this online. So when you do a game on WordWall, there's two possibilities you have. You can play this online with your students, like you're doing now, like I'm doing now, and I'm not going to play the whole game. It's just to show you. Or you can give the students the link, and they can play by themselves. So you have those two possibilities. Okay, so this is something I would do. Why? Because it makes the class more interesting. Okay, instead of me just going over these activities by using the book. Okay, so
Mr.
this is
Fabio?
what I've done. Yes.
Miss Janet is asking, what application is that?
Yeah, I'm going to show you at the end. This is called WordWall. Let me share the screen again. But I will show you at the end, and this is also on your handout. Okay, also on your handout. It's called WordWall. WordWall is one of those platforms that you can use partly for free. They have a basic service, and then if you want extra services, you have to pay. But I've only used the basic services. I don't pay anything. And there's also another advantage to WordWall. Everything that you make on WordWall, you can make it private or public, so other teachers can use your resources, and you can also use some resources from other teachers. And I'll show that to you at the end, okay? I promise, right? I'll show it to you at the end. So this is how I adapted my holiday activities. So in this case, I chose to play the game together, okay? And then at the end of the game, I can ask the students, pick your top 3 activities and share them with your classmates or with the group, okay? To get them to participate and interact with the new words, okay? Now that I've done the trivia, that I've asked them about the country, and I've showed them some of the vocabulary, I can get them to read the text, okay? So I can, because this is a short text. It's a short text. It will probably take them maybe 5 to 10 minutes to read. I could choose to read it online. If this was a long text, I would do like one of the teachers that spoke before shared with us. I would ask the students to read the text before the class. It really depends. My decision about reading online or not depends on how long the text is. Because if you read for too long online, it can become boring. It will make your class a little boring, okay? So how would I do this? Okay, I would ask them to read the text in a big group and then answer the questions on a form. Where is the form? On Google Drive. Here's the link. I will show you what the form looks like. Now, this form I prepared before my class, right? And I will share with my students. I will share the link, and this is what it looks like. This is the same vocabulary activity from the book, okay? What adjectives are used in the text to describe the following? The beaches, the shopping, and the settings. Okay, same thing from the book. I just adapted to online. Now, let me ask you, some of you, this question real quickly. And you can unmute yourself if you feel comfortable. What is the advantage of doing this online as opposed to just having them write on the book? What is the advantage? What is one advantage of doing this on Google Docs as opposed to online? Any volunteers? Do you see any advantages, or is it the same?
Yeah, we have Miss Juliana, I think, the first participant. Hello,
Yeah.
Miss Juliana.
Yeah, there's an interactive a class with the student, so we can interactive and see which student that participant and which one that's just daydreaming in the class.
Exactly, because you give them something to do. You got it exactly right. You give them something to do, and when you do it on Google Drive or using Google Forms, you have a record of who did it and who didn't do it. That's an important thing, okay? So, and again, seriously, to create this form with only beaches, shopping, and setting, it took me, and climate, it took me like 3 to 4 minutes only. Yes, it takes longer, but I have a record of who did it and who didn't do it. Okay, so, and all they have to do is just look at the text and write the words here. Okay, now you could also ask them to do it in groups and write the names of their group members here if you ask them to do it in groups during the online lesson. Okay, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms and you can read the text together and you can answer the form together. You could do that as well if you have a small class. Okay, so this is the activity, the vocabulary activity, the reading comprehension activity, because now I'm asking them to read the text and answer the question. So now after they read the text, I can check their answers to the trivia, because they're going to find all these answers in the text. So I say, remember the questions I asked you to answer before? Now that you have read the text, tell me what the right answers are. And so they can give me the answer, again, to make it like sort of like a game. And now I can move to the second vocabulary activity, which is also adapted from the book. Okay, I'm using Google Drive again, and if I had a class, I would probably put them in breakout rooms for maybe 5 minutes. And if I do breakout rooms, here's what I would do. I would say, okay, go to your breakout rooms, discuss, and choose one member of your group to report your discussion to the class. Because that's the only way to know if they were actually discussing the topic, okay? And of course, you as a teacher, you can also go into the breakout rooms and stay in each room for 30 seconds and monitor. You could do that, right? But give them something to report back, okay? Give them something to report back, because if you just tell your students sometimes, go to your breakout rooms and talk, you may not know if they discussed the topic or not, okay? So it's a very good strategy to use when you're teaching. Report back, okay? So what does this look like? Let me show you again on Google Docs. So this is the second vocabulary activity, okay? What did I do? I picked some of the key words, okay, in the text, some of the words that the book focuses on, and I gave them 2 sentences using each word. One sentence I took from the text. The other sentence I took from a dictionary, an online dictionary, okay? Why did I do this? Because I want them to find out the meaning of the words in context. And if I give them more than one sentence, I am giving them more tools to be successful, okay? Because if they don't understand one sentence, they may be able to understand the second sentence. And then this will help them figure out the meaning, okay? This is very useful when you're doing vocabulary in context, okay? So for example, look at number 2. Cape Town has a range of activities from hiking to climbing to diving and golf. If they don't understand the word range here, they can read the second sentence. I gave her a range of options. So the students have to say, what do they think range means? Does it mean a few, a set or a group, many or enough? Okay. And again, this will help you. Again, Google Docs helps you know who did it and who didn't do it. Gives you a record of what your students know and what they don't know yet and what you need to explain again or not. Any questions so far?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, actually, there is a question from Miss or Mr. Leon Travers. It's actually from the word wall, the activity you just showed us.
Sure.
He asked, how would you flip the activity rather than the teacher saying the vocab? So the students say the words.
So can you repeat the question? Sorry.
How would you flip this activity rather than the teacher saying the vocab?
You could do it. And again, the way that I just showed you the activity, the way you play that game really depends on what you want to emphasize. For example, if your focus is, first of all, my focus here in the beginning was to get them to understand the meaning of the activity. Okay, and why was I saying the words? Because I want them to get the right pronunciation, the right way to say it first. Okay, but I could, for example, ask the students to repeat, or I could ask maybe 1 or 2 volunteers to repeat. And each time I'd say a new word, I would get 2 more volunteers. And I will ask my other students, okay, even though I don't ask you to repeat online, repeat to yourself. Okay, it's important. You're right. You could. If your students already know the words, have them say it. You don't have to say it. Now, if you think you have to teach them the pronunciation, you may want to say the words first. But I think your strategy is also very valid and very good, depending on what you want to focus on. Very good question. Thank you. Okay. So going back here, I have some, all the words that I want my students to focus on, like words that can be very complicated. Currency, right? And for example, the sentence in the text is not very helpful. The local currency is the rand, right? If you don't know what currency means, this doesn't help you so much. So I added another sentence. The dollar is the currency used in the US. Okay, this helps the students understand the meaning a lot more than the sentence from the text. Okay, because I want to help them and I want them to be successful, right? As a teacher, that's my goal. So what do I do next in my synchronous sequence? Okay, so after my vocabulary, I'm going to do a vocabulary review. So I'm going to do another word wall game, okay, which is a game that I created. How does this game work? Okay, again, I just practiced about 6 or 7 words in that Google form. So now I'm going to bring my students back to word wall, and I'm going to play a game of hangman. Okay, hangman is I give them a synonym, and they have to find out which word they have to guess. For example, there is one here. Let me show you. Okay, what is this the symbol for? What word in the text is this the symbol for? I just showed you in the vocabulary, this word here, the last word, number 5. What is this symbol a symbol for?
Yeah, there are some answers. Currency, they said.
Currency, there you go.
Yeah,
okay, this is how I play. So I would have, the students would say, which letter? C, okay, great. Okay, and then if you get a wrong letter, you will start hanging your little guy, poor guy, right? So, and then you, okay, the students will say you, okay, great. And you can play this as a class with your student. So this is another application of word wall. Word wall is very good for vocabulary, not just word wall. There's probably other platforms as well. There's certainly others, okay? So I'm focusing on all the words that I just practiced. So scenery, view, right? So I don't give them the word, I give them a synonym. And so they have to figure that out, okay? So this is a way to adapt a vocabulary activity. All right, moving on here. So I I do my word wall activity, and then to finish my session, I would give them some homework. Okay, after we have read the text, learned the vocabulary, talked about or read about Cape Town, South Africa, I'm going to ask them to make a holiday plan. And why? Because I want to see what they understood or not about the words and the vocabulary and the text that we practiced in class. Now, that doesn't mean that, of course, I could still discuss the text with them. There's a lot of other things I could do with reading comprehension, right, in this class. I'm not saying this is the end of it, but let me show you what the holiday plan looks like. So here we have, the holiday plan is basically another Google form where imagine your family is planning a holiday. Choose a place anywhere in the world to visit, then fill in the text fields below with notes about your holiday plans. So where are you going? And why am I asking those questions? Where are you going? Because one of the focuses or foci, if you prefer, of the unit is making plans using the present continuous. So the activities before my text, in the unit, they focused on present continuous and going to, okay? To make plans, making plans. So I'm using that verb structure here that is not part of this lesson, but it was part of my lesson before as a way to get them to use it and revise. Okay, where are you going? How long are you staying? And where are you staying? Where are you? What are you planning to do there? How are you getting there? Okay, so basic information. And this gives me also some material to, if I continue my next class, in my next class, when I continue, my first activity could be, okay, now I'm going to put you in groups, and you have to share your holiday plans with your classmates. They could share in speaking. Okay, and by doing this on Google Forms, I also have a record of who did the homework and who did not do the homework. Okay, this is also an important thing to consider. Okay, so this is my synchronous. Oh, sorry, this is my synchronous sequence. This is my synchronous sequence. Okay, so let's do a quick discussion. Let's pause for a bit. Okay, and I'm going to call a couple of volunteers just to have you share. You can also share on the chat box. Okay, or in the chat box. So, how does this demo or this walkthrough compare with classroom teaching? So if you think about me teaching a class, like a real class with my students, how is this synchronous sequence that I just showed you different from classroom teaching? What's the same and what is different? Okay, and which of the 4 skills, okay, could I have practiced in this lesson? Do you think I could have practiced speaking, listening, reading, and writing, or not necessarily? What do you think? So think about this. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. Okay, and I'm going to get some volunteers. Bocha can help me as well if you wish. Let me get a couple of volunteers here to share with us. And if I pick your name, just unmute yourself and share with us. So let's see here. Let's see. Janet Alamil, would you like to share with us any of the answers to those questions? Janet, are you there? All right, so let me pick. Okay, so would you like to share your answers to those questions? Like how is this the same or different from classroom teaching?
I think Miss Janet is not responding us, but we have Miss Dian Wangai answering on the chat box. Maybe we can invite Miss Dian, yeah?
Okay,
Mr.
please.
Fabio, what
Ms.
about
Dian?
that? Okay.
Perfect.
Hello, Miss Dian. Please unmute yourself first. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, hello.
So what do you think? How is this different from what we could do in the classroom, for example? What do you think?
Okay, so I think to teach online, we need some application or platforms to make it more interesting, yeah, because we can't see the student face to face. So to make the class not too bored. So yeah, we try, like you told us before we have to provide more interesting material. Maybe use some platform that you show us before also, like the World War. Yeah, so I think that's make it more different, because when we are teaching directly face to face, it's hardly ever we use the application, just directly manual, yeah, just follow the textbook and then do it practically directly in the class, yeah. So I think that's the different things between teaching online and then teaching in the classroom.
Thank you so much. And do you think this is a lot more work for us teachers?
Yes, I think so, because yeah, I try also some application before to teach my student, to help me also and to help the student, and I think I have to improve a lot of things, yeah, especially our talks, to find more application that's useful to the class, especially how to deliver the material to the student, to make the student more understand about the material.
Okay.
Because if you only just show the material on the screen and then just explain, sometimes the student get difficult to understand. But when we
Okay.
put it, yeah, when we put the material in different view, like put it in the game or put it like to show like video, yeah, sometimes I put
This
the
makes
the video on YouTube. So they will
thank
like,
you.
yeah, they are so interested to join and then also give a feedback.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're
So thank you
welcome.
for your participation. Let me get another volunteer to, maybe you can share a little bit about the first question if you want, but I'm probably going to ask you about the second question. What skills did the lesson include? So I see here, Agnes, are you there? Can you unmute and share with us? What skills did this lesson include? Or Agnes, I think. Agnes Meti. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Okay.
Agnes, would you please turn on the camera, please, so we can see your face?
Okay, wait.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello. So, actually, I want to talk about the platform that you've been using. Actually, with this many platform out there, we can still teach online classes, just like the one we have in regular classroom. And I think that the skills needed, we can still include that in our lesson. We can still, by using this platform, we can practice speaking, also reading, right, listening, everything. I think these online lessons, we can still deliver all the lessons we want to our classroom.
You could, yeah. You're right. It really depends on how I choose to do my activities, right? With a focus on speaking, I can do small breakout rooms and speaking. They can listen to me. I could play an audio of the reading, so they could listen to the reading they read during my class. They wrote the answers on the form. So you could involve as many skills as you want. Thank you so much for your participation with us. So moving on here. So let me show you another sequence. Okay, so this sequence I would be using if I chose to adapt this lesson to a synchronous session. Notice that I didn't adapt every single activity in the book. I chose the activities that connect to my objectives. Right? My objectives was to get them to interact, to make a holiday plan, get some vocabulary. That was part of my objective. So I didn't adapt all the activities in the book. Also, when I was talking to one of the participants before about games, sometimes making those games can be a lot of work for the teacher. Now, because this is sort of like a model that I'm showing you, I included 3 games here. But you don't have to include 3 games. If you have time to make one game, make one game. Even if you do one game in class, it's better than doing none, okay? And then maybe in the future, you have that game ready to go. You can add another game and then play the previous game again if the students enjoyed it. So you don't have to spend hours creating everything at once. Create one thing at a time and start introducing those elements one at a time. because otherwise it becomes very difficult for us as teachers. We don't have the time to be creating games the whole day at home, right? We know that. So it's important to recognize that as well. So start small, but keep on going, keep on moving, right? So let me show you what this...
Sorry, Mr. Fabio, before we continue further, there are questions, but it's actually the same. It's from Miss Leon and Miss Maria. Sir, how long would this lesson last for? There is a massive difference in pacing, such as how much content we can cover varies greatly between on and offline, online and
okay.
offline.
So I'm going to give you two answers. The handout from that book, if I look at the text, like the Cape Town text and all the activities around it, in a regular classroom, that would probably take me 2 to 3 classes, okay? Notice that I didn't adapt probably 2 classes depending on the level of the students. I would say 2. Now, I didn't adapt all the activities. My focus for this synchronous sequence was to get them to understand the text and to get them to interact with the vocabulary from the text. So I planned this sequence here for 1 hour, but I'm not assuming that my students are beginners, right? They're probably like, they're probably maybe, they have some basic knowledge, okay? Because this is also Unit 8 in the book, right? But this is not their first English lesson. That's Unit 8, so they've studied English for maybe a few months, right? And I planned that activity for about 1 hour. Why? Because if you think about it, there are 6 activities. One is a homework. So they're going to do 5 in the class. 3 of them are vocabulary games, right? And no, actually 2 of them are vocabulary games. And even the Google form activities, notice that one involved just writing adjectives that they saw on the text, and the other one involved a multiple choice, because I didn't design the activities to take too much time, because I don't want my students spending 20 minutes on one single activity online. I try to limit, I try to maybe every 10 minutes switch to something different, okay? Again, it depends on the topic. For this topic, I could do it. That's a very good question that you asked, by the way. What is the next question?
Yeah, that's actually the same question about how long does the lesson take? Thank you, Mr. Fabio.
So that sequence, 1 hour, but I would probably have to do another sequence to finish that text, right? Because I still haven't covered everything in the text, okay? I was just giving you an example of how I would introduce this text to the students, okay? But those are good questions, okay? I would say sometimes if you're doing, if you have 20 students in class, maybe 3 to 4 activities for you to do is enough for an online class, okay? But again, it depends on how quickly your students can move and how used they are to online classes, okay? But yeah, and I'm giving you a very generic answer, okay? This is not a very specific answer. So let me show you another possibility here. Let me give you a situation here. Let's say that the reality of my school is the following. I have to teach online, but half of my students don't have good enough internet to be online for 1 hour. It's not a possibility. So what can I do in this case? Well, in this case, my only choice would be to develop the same lesson asynchronously. Okay, what would this lesson look like? Well, if I'm doing this asynchronously, I would do it all on Google Classroom. Okay, this is the lesson that I have created for my students. Okay, and so on Google Classroom, I would have 3 parts. Okay, I would begin with a quick discussion. I would give this to my students and say, okay, you do this at home, and then we meet online after that, or I'll check with you on WhatsApp or whatever platform you can use to communicate with them. So they will begin, the lesson begins with a activate your knowledge type of question. Where are you planning to spend your next holiday? This is a discussion question, right? They answer that. And then this is an introduction to the unit. I found a video on YouTube about Cape Town, a 5-minute video that they watch about Cape Town, and they have to watch the video and answer some simple questions about the video on Google Forms. And I can show you the questions here if you want to take a look at them. Okay, it's just about what were your favorite scenes from the video? What activities or sports can visitors do in Cape Town? Why did I put this form? Because the only way for you to know if your students watch the video or not is to ask a couple of questions. I don't want them to spend a long time answering those questions. That's why I put only 2. And I don't want the answers to be too long. Okay, so very direct questions. What were your favorite scenes? What sports or activities can visitors do in Cape Town according to the video? That's it, okay? And so after they watch the video, then I have the unit here for them, okay? I ask them to read the text. This is what my instructions do. And then they do that vocabulary activity that you saw here, this one here, okay? What adjectives are used in the text to describe the following? The beaches, the shopping, the settings, the climate. That's the same activity, okay? So read the text, answer the vocabulary question. So that's the second part of my lesson. The third part of my lesson is an additional focus on vocabulary. I asked them to go back to the text, okay, and answer these questions that I showed you before, the same ones that I used in my synchronous sequence. Okay, it's a vocabulary based on vocabulary question exercise based on reading the questions and determining or inferring the meaning of the words. Okay, they will do that. So vocabulary part, and then here I gave them the link to the game. I gave them the link to this word wall game so they can play by themselves. Because the advantage of word wall is that you can create a game, and even if the students are doing the lesson asynchronously at home, they can still play the game. You just give them the link. So I gave them the link. So they click here and they play the game. Am I going too fast, or is that okay? I mean, okay, Oche, if you can give me some feedback on the comments. If someone tells me that I'm going too fast, I can slow down, okay?
Okay.
So this is my vocabulary activities, okay? So, and this is what I'm doing here. And after the sports activity, my next activity includes the homework for them. They have to make a holiday plan. That's my asynchronous sequence. Okay, so notice that most of my activities were the same, right? Most activities are the same, but instead of doing this in real time, synchronously, the students will do them at home. How can I know if my students did the activities or not? Well, I have the Google Forms, they have to fill them out, okay? So I have a record of who completed the activities and who did not complete the activities, okay? So this is basically what it is. So let me go back to the class for it. And here, so after the vocabulary, the last are my individual tasks, right? So I'm asking them not just to make a holiday plan, that's the homework, but I am asking them to share the holiday plan. How did I ask them to share? I gave them a link, and I'm gonna show you this in a little bit, okay? This is a link to a program where they record their holiday plan, and they put a link to their recording so I can listen to the recording. So I gave them, here, this is a website where they go and they do it online. They speak and they record here. They record their holiday plan. And then after they record, the website will give them a link. They go back here and they click on this. The instructions are on Google Forms. They go here and they put their name and they put the link to their audio file. So I, as a teacher, can listen to their recording because I want them to practice some speaking, right? That's what I do. So they record and they record and they give me the link. I already created the file and I put everything on Google Classroom. So this is what's happening here, okay? So if you look on Google Classroom, so everything here, record a short audio file and share your holiday plan with your classmates. Make sure to include all the information from your form and add some more details. After you record your file, copy the link and paste it onto the spreadsheet below. So everything is here on Google Classroom. I don't have to explain anything. Okay? So this is asynchronous. Now, let me talk about this a little bit with you. So what are some interesting things about this asynchronous lesson? Notice that I'm not interacting with the students. They're doing this at home and they're sending the forms, not they're sending, the Google form is keeping track of their forms and they're sharing the audio file with me. Okay, just to make it clear. So this is what an asynchronous sequence looks like. So let me get your opinion here. So and of course I did this all on Google Classroom. Okay, and of course I use Google Forms and WordWall and YouTube and everything else, but this is, okay. So let me do another discussion with you. Do you think a lesson sequence like this, completely asynchronously, do you think this is going to work with your students? Why or why not? And how comfortable do you feel planning asynchronous lessons? So think about it for a few seconds, and I'm going to call a couple of volunteers to share with us. And Ocha, you can feel free to call as well, okay? If you notice
Okay,
that.
Mr. Fabio.
Okay, there is a comment here on Zoom that I think is very interesting. Let me read it here. With 20 students in a class, I find Zoom ineffective. There is far too much dead time for primary students. Okay, we're gonna address that in a little bit. Okay, let's talk about the questions before, and then I'm gonna address that. But think about those two questions here for now. Okay, would this work with your students? How comfortable do you feel planning completely asynchronous sequences or lessons? Do we have any volunteers that would like to share with us?
Silakan Bapak Ibu, jika ada yang ingin menyampaikan pendapatnya, bisa menggunakan fitur raise hand juga.
In the meantime, I'm choosing someone here to participate. So let's get here. Maria Elena, are you there?
Hello, Miss Maria.
Hello. So would you like to give us your perspective on the questions?
Okay, I'm actually from preschool department, but I find this very interesting. I think it really depends on the family dynamics, sir, and the age group. Okay, I think for the upper levels, they can do this on their own, but for the lower levels, they will really need the help of their parents or any guardian at home.
I see. And have you been teaching online with your preschool students?
I'm sorry?
Are you still teaching online with your preschool students?
Yes, we do. I don't teach now. I oversee my teachers.
I see. And how is it working for you?
It's, again, depending on the age group. The K1s and the K2s are really engaging, and the N1s and the N2s are really, it's a very challenging online classes.
Thank you for your participation. Thank you very much. And one thing I would like to highlight that she said is that it really depends on the age groups. A lot of the research on online teaching so far has showed that the older your students are, the more likely they are to be successful when working independently, right? So if you have primary students and they have to do asynchronous lessons, they may need a little more assistance from parents. But if you have middle school to high school students, after they get used to working by themselves, it may be easier for them to do it, okay? Let's get somebody else. I see here, Dennis Paneda. Would you like to share your perspective with us? Either about the first or second question? Dennis Paneda, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm here. So with regards to the first question, yes, it's very effective for the upper primary, since the upper primary students could be able to work independently. So I think this is very effective, especially if the students know already to work by their own without or lesser guidance from their parents.
Now, do you think it's possible to teach your students or to train your students to little by little be able to do this independently without the help of their parents?
Yes, sir. As long as the teacher could be able to give a concrete or specific instructions, like what you did in your Google Classroom, wherein the instructions are very clear enough for the students to be able to understand. So if that will be the case, then students will not tend to ask to the teacher or to ask assistance from their parents, because the instructions given is already clear enough for them to follow.
Okay, thank you for participation. Thank you very much. And I hope all of you have been successful in your teaching. Let's get somebody else to share an answer to question number 2. How comfortable do you feel planning asynchronous lessons? Anybody? I'm going to choose somebody here, but if anybody wants to jump in, just unmute yourself and share with us. How comfortable do you feel planning lessons asynchronously?
I can jump in maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Your
name?
Mike McDonald.
Mike. Okay, please, Mike. Mike, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mike, you are still muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have hit that by accident.
Thank you.
Well, what I do is, because we've had to address this after facing, in the school that I worked at, we've had to address this directly, because last year, when we began in term 4 with this online learning, we ended up facing a lot of complaints from parents and students due to the excessive homework, as I think a lot of teachers were overcompensating with online teaching, and students were going home with headaches and a lot of complaints with things like that. So what we've had to do is splitting the period times and doing half online with Zoom and half online with the asynchronous learning. And before we would do online learning, what I do and a lot of teachers do is we post the material that we'll be covering online. We post that before, like the day before, to let the students have access to it and become familiar with it. Then we can make the most use of the time online with Zoom by answering and asking questions and clarifying issues or whatever. Granted, I do teach secondary and upper secondary, but even with P6 it works, because we make the entire Zoom time that we have is filled with addressing the actual material that we're covering and that they will be working on post-Zoom class with asynchronous. So it's, as long as you're prepared with the material that you're going to cover before you have the Zoom class, the students stay quite busy. And
and I think that you hit the nail on the head here, because I think the key to successful online learning and teaching is actually not, I completely agree with you, it's not necessarily just doing everything synchronously or asynchronously. It's determining which aspects of your lesson are better done synchronously and are better done asynchronously, right? And that's why a lot of the research on, the little research, right? The little research that we've had so far on online teaching and learning shows that the most successful teachers are the ones that do a hybrid, because trying to do everything online can be a little exhausting for students and actually too much for the teacher also, right? And you end up overcompensating with homework and other things, Let me show you here, because I think I'm gonna use your participation, Mike, as a lead to my suggestion here, which is the third walkthrough. This is actually what I do when I teach online, and this is what I would suggest people do, and that's what it looks like you are doing also, Mike. I would say, find out, okay, what can I do offline before I meet my students online, and what can I do offline after I meet my students online? So for example, for this particular sequence, okay, there is many possibilities, right? It really depends on what my emphasis or my focus is. I could, the video that I had them watch in my asynchronous sequence on Google Classroom, I could have them watch the video, do the trivia, the sports and activities game, and even read the text to get a general idea. I could have them do this before we meet online asynchronously. That would be a possibility. When I do my online class, I could keep it very dynamic in participative, right? I could have them, I could check the trivia with them, because they do the trivia at home. I check online. I read the text, but this only to focus on details of the text, not the general idea. I do the vocabulary activities, the ones that are more complex than just the activities. And then maybe a group or class discussion in small groups. And then I assign the homework, the holiday plan, not only to make the plan and to share the plan at home. So what did I do here? I identified portions of my lesson that I could do asynchronously so that I wouldn't waste a lot of time and make the online session too long, the real-time session too long. I focused on what students need my help with online. Of course, as a teacher, right? What do they need my help with as a teacher? What is better done if I am with them? So I put those activities in my synchronous online class. And then I asked them to do the homework and share asynchronously. I do think that, again, I think, in my opinion, if you're teaching kids that are way too young, probably your synchronous or online portion will probably be a little larger than this. Now, if you teach your students little by little how to work asynchronously, even if you're teaching younger students, so P6 or P5 or P4, you can actually get them to little by little spend less time learning fully synchronously with you to learning more asynchronously. Remember that we can train and teach our students to be successful asynchronously. We're not going to get to do this in 1 week or 2 weeks, but little by little we can do that. Okay, and this is something that we should recognize as teachers, not just to try to reproduce everything that we do in the classroom in an online session, because if we do that, we're more likely to be unsuccessful, but also find a balance similar to this one that works for us, right? And so let's do just another discussion. I'm going to ask a few people here before we jump into resources, because I want to show you some resources. What are the pros and cons of implementing hybrid online learning? So what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing something like this here? Okay, do you see any? Do you think it's better than doing everything fully synchronously or asynchronously? Or is it something easy to do with your class and students? So I'm going to get a couple of volunteers, but if anybody wants to, just jump in, please. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of a hybrid sequence like this one? So let me see here. I have Fauzia. Are you online? Fauzia Kairani, I think. Are you there?
Hello, Miss Fauzia.
Fauzia, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry
Miss
if I
Fauzia.
mispronounced your name.
Could you please unmute yourself, Miss?
So
I think she's not responding.
Yeah, let's get Mr. Mamerto. Are you there? Mamerto Gilbert, right?
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Gilbert.
Are you there? Let's try. Mr. Mamerto, are you there?
We don't have.
Okay, so let's try Sulta. Sulta, are you there?
Sulta is actually our team, Mr. Fabio from Mentari.
My bad. Okay.
I think we can invite Mr. Aam again, because he is also asking about, in asynchronous learning, do we teachers have to provide a real-time session via video conference to ensure students' mastery of the taught lessons?
So let's get him to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello,
let's
Mr.
get him
Aam.
to participate.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, actually it's been answered.
Yeah, through the sequence.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because there is a session like hybrid session. Yeah. Okay, but I mean, I will try to answer the questions about the effectiveness. Yeah, I think it's more effective because the students will prepare themselves before they join our synchronous session. But the drawback maybe it's like it needs discipline from the students to prepare themselves, because maybe when we start the online session, they are not they haven't done the assignment or they haven't done the activities that we have prepared through the asynchronous platform. That's it.
So yeah, you're right. And when you're doing things asynchronously, you may end up with not all the students doing the activity. That's why as much as you can, and I'm not saying this just to you, but to everyone, as much as we can, add different layers of, for example, a Google form, or maybe once you finish, you have to send me a message on WhatsApp, or if you have a Facebook group, once you finish, you have to take a picture of your assignment and put a picture on Facebook. Add those layers of checking so that students know that it's not just about doing the work, it's about showing proof that I've done the work. Okay, so do the work and show that you've done it. Okay, this is very, very important online. And you're right. If I get a group of students who has never worked asynchronously, and I give them a lesson tomorrow, they're not going to be successful probably, right? If they're not really disciplined. So what do I need to do as a teacher? Every new habit needs to be taught. Okay, so teach them. Okay, so we're going to do part of our lesson online, or synchronously, part of our lesson asynchronously. When you do your activities asynchronous, here's how it works. You log on, you see the instructions, you click here, you click there. If you have any questions, send me a message and I can help you. So we have to teach our students. And probably I would create a very short sequence and I would go through the sequence. So walk them through that sequence during my live session to show my students little by little or step by step how they accomplish that. Okay, so you're right. You're absolutely right. That needs to be taught. Okay, it's a new habit, right? Especially if they haven't done it yet, if they're not used to it, if they're acquiring the new habit or a new habit, and you have to teach them how to do it. Okay, thank you for your participation. Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to jump in, or can we move on? Let's see if we have any other questions here. But I do think that as a professional myself and as a teacher, I do think that the key to planning a good lesson is what elements of this lesson need to be done synchronously. Okay, do it in a live session. What elements of this lesson are best done asynchronously? Then send it as assignment to students. And remember that this is not something new also. Right? When we give homework to students, a homework is an asynchronous type of activity, right? Homework is asynchronous, and meeting students in class is synchronous. So students are used to this, except that when you do activities asynchronously on the internet, you do have some more resources. You can incorporate videos and forms and other things like that. Okay. So now, before some final reflections on those sequences. Okay, so. The reality is that the older your students, the more independent they'll be, especially learning asynchronously. This is just a reality. It doesn't mean that younger students can do it. It's just that you have to teach them or spend more time teaching them how to work asynchronously. So the younger your students, the more time you need to spend teaching them. Again, new ways of learning is the same as creating new habits, right? So. And it's not easy to create a new habit. So this takes time. So for your students to be able to learn successfully online, they need quite a bit of time and training to be able to do that. And take small progressive steps, okay? If it's very hard for you to plan a whole lesson full of games and activities, introduce one new element at a time so that you're not overwhelmed and you can develop your own skills step by step also, because that will give you more chances of success. Okay? And I do think that in today's world, I do think that by doing asynchronous activities online, I do think we are actually teaching something very important to our students. We're teaching them to be autonomous. Because the reality of the internet today is when we go online, there's so many MOOCs or online courses that students can take by themselves. And most of these courses are asynchronous courses. So by introducing this asynchronous element to your teaching, as you teach online, you're actually empowering your students to be more independent as learners. So you're not just helping yourself as a teacher and making things easier for you and your students. You're teaching them a good skill. Students should be able to learn asynchronously these days, because that's how we learn these days also. We learn both synchronous and asynchronous. And if we don't incorporate this element to our classes, we are denying them of the chance to develop those skills. So I do think it is very important, okay, to actually teach in a hybrid way, where we meet them online, but we also add elements that do not take place in real time. Okay, so this is just some food for thought that I would like to leave. Let's open for questions and answers. Before, I would do maybe 5 to 10 minutes of questions and answers, and then I'm just going to highlight some other tools and websites and apps that you could use to enhance your synchronous or asynchronous teaching. But let's take some questions first.
Yeah, we actually already have a first question from Miss Astri Hoiron, Mr. Fabio. It's about, sir, how to deal with students' apathy or to increase students' motivation in learning English online, particularly during this pandemic?
I would say the first thing I would suggest you do is determine what the cause of lack of motivation is. For the most part, at least most studies shows that students are not motivated because they can't understand the content, or they're not able to engage with the content because it's too difficult for them, right? Or maybe it could be a discipline issue, or it could be because the activities are not interesting, or the class is going on for too long. So if the content is not so interesting, if the class is going on for too long, so this is something that we as teachers can change, right? Maybe we can change, like, okay, half the class logs on for a period, the other half logs on for another period, so that they don't have to stay too long online, and we have fewer students, but with a more concentrated type of work. If the activities are too boring, you can add some games and things to make it more interesting. But if the reason is that your student cannot keep up with the pace of the class, then you probably need to address that student in particular, or maybe add some more scaffolding, right? How can I add some tools and resources to help my students access this content, right? So it really, really depends on the reason why they're not motivated, right? It depends on that reason. So if they're not motivated because they can't understand, address the issue with them. If they're not motivated because the class is too boring or the activities are too monotonous, then try to make it more interesting. That's all I can say in a more generic sense. Okay. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fabio. And there is also a question from Ms. Rosa Arista. What do you think about implementing this hybrid method for subjects that usually involve many investigation or experiments, such as science?
It's possible. There's a lot of examples online, and you should, if you go on YouTube or even on the internet, okay, there's a lot of examples of science teachers teaching asynchronously. But again, you have to think of a couple of things. So when I think of a science experiment, if you do a live demonstration, for example, let's say you do a synchronous lesson, you do a live demonstration of an experiment to them, okay? You could do that online, and they'll probably be interesting because they're seeing an experiment online. And then you could do a follow-up to that experiment as an asynchronous activity, okay, based on what you observed, or you could record a video of your experiment and put it online. So they could watch the experiment again and answer the questions. Or you can find experiments on video on YouTube and put the experiment, they watch the video, they watch what happened, answer the question. That's a possibility. Or you could just describe the steps of the experiment and say, read the steps of this experiment and read the result, and then ask for their opinion if you cannot use video. But there's other ways to do it. I think video in this case would be a good solution if they need to watch the experiment going on.
Okay, thank you. And next we have a question from Ms. Sri Haryati. What can we do or give for the student as a trigger for them to be active in English Zoom class? That's the first one. And the second one is about what kind of reward we can give to students when they success to do some tasks by online.
Okay, well, can you repeat the second one?
The second one is about the reward. So if the students successfully doing the task, so what kind of reward can the teachers give to the student?
I would say, let me address the reward first, and then I'll go to the first question you asked. The rewards, it really depends on what rewards you normally use in your classroom. You could though, for example, there's a lot of classroom management platforms that are fully online. Class Dojo is one of them, especially if they're younger kids. And for example, if your students, if you do Class Dojo, like if they complete an assignment online, they do it quickly, you can give them points on Class Dojo. You can, and then there's prizes you can give them on Class Dojo. You can give them, I've seen teachers giving less homework when students are more successful in their tasks. So you did it quickly, you did it well. So if there are 3 tasks for homework, you have only 2 because you get to choose one of the tasks that you don't need to do because you did really well in class. There's a lot of different types of motivation. You cannot give prizes. You may not be able to give them prizes online or like physical prizes, but you may be able to use an online platform to gamify your teaching a little bit, right? Class Dojo is one that I would really recommend. If you want to create a sense of community and give rewards, give points, use Class Dojo. If you don't know what it is, go on YouTube or online and type Class Dojo. I will write the name of the app here, and there are plenty of videos and tutorials on that. I would say half of the teachers, primary school teachers in the United States today, they probably over half, I think the last research says over half of them use Class Dojo. It's very effective, especially if you're teaching online. And the first question, can you repeat that again? Is about?
It's about how to trigger the students to be more active in English Zoom class.
Okay.
Specifically on Zoom meeting, yeah.
Yeah. If you're doing a Zoom meeting, a live meeting, and you are using, and you want the students to speak and to be accountable for participating, let me give you 2 situations. For example, if I have a big group like this one, I cannot use breakout rooms because it's too many people and most connections are going to drop and it's going to be a big problem. So I chose to, so I'm using a combination of chat box and calling on people to participate, right? So I call on someone here, I call on someone there. I invite people to participate. And if I know that 1 or 2 people are not really participating, I'm calling on them, okay? In a classroom, this is easy. What do you need to do? You just need to have a piece of paper in front of you with the name of all your students. If you call on a student, do a check mark. And then next time you call on another student that is not checked. And so to make sure that maybe in this Zoom session, you're gonna call on half of your students to participate. Maybe another Zoom session, you can call on the other half to participate. Another possibility also is, if you're doing breakout rooms, as I told you before, assign one person in the breakout room to be the reporter of the discussion. So when they finish the breakout room discussion and they go back to the main room, that person has to report on what they discussed and what was discussed. And so this is a way to tell your students that, okay, I want you to do this, and there is something that you need to give back after you do the speaking or the discussion or whatever it is. Because if they're not accountable for what you ask them to do, if you don't hold them accountable, then they may choose not to do it. And there's no way for you to control it, right? Now, if you're asking them to do, participate in writing, then use Google Forms, because in Google Forms, you can actually ask your student to add their name or their email address. And so you're gonna have all the answers attached to a name. So you can know if they participated or not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fabio. Maybe we can continue to your slides because we only have 15 more minutes, and no worries, because after that we will also have a Q&A session again. So please do, Mr. Fabio. Thank you. So
let me just prepare you all for that. So this second part, additional resources, I didn't design this to cover everything. I'm just going to highlight a few things for you. It doesn't matter if I don't cover everything, because all the slides are part of the handout that you will receive. So if there's any apps or websites or platforms you are interested in, if I don't cover them in detail here, you will see them, and I will try to show some of them, okay? I tried to divide them into 4 groups, okay? Actually, I tried to highlight 4 of them: WordWall, VoiceSpice, Google Docs, which I'm not gonna spend too much time on because you probably use them, and Flipgrid. Why do I think especially WordWall, VoiceSpice, and Flipgrid are important? Because WordWall allows you to have material for writing and for speaking, because you can play a game and then write something or discuss it. And it always involves a lot of reading and vocab, which is a good thing. And VoiceSpice and Flipgrid are voice or video versions of platforms for speaking and listening. Okay, so let me show some of those sample resources here. Let me show you so you can have like a brief idea of how to use them. So here's an example from WordWall. This is a free resource that one teacher created, and it's free and available to all of us. And it's a very good example of how to practice speaking online. So what this teacher did is, this teacher created a wheel of questions, right? So how do I do? If I have a live session with my students, I can spin it, okay? And the wheel will stop one question: what do you study? And so I can get 1 or 2 volunteers to answer the question, okay? If I want to go back to the same question, okay, then I just spin it again. But if I don't want to go back to the same question, then I click on eliminate here. So if I eliminate, so that question will disappear. So I'm not gonna practice it again. And so I can spin it again, okay? So why is this helpful? Because I can use this wheel if I want to, or I can create another wheel for my students to practice. Okay. Instead of questions, I could add vocabulary words to the wheel, and I could ask the students to make sentences using the words. Okay. So there's a lot of ways that I can use WordWall for vocabulary. It's a very, very interesting game platform, and it's good for focusing on vocabulary and etc. So here I included more links, and you will get those links. I'm not gonna cover those links now. You will find those links on your handout, and you can explore those other games, okay? Now, why do I like VoiceSpice? And I showed you that before. The advantage, a big advantage to VoiceSpice is that once your students use VoiceSpice, actually, I can show you on the slides themselves. I don't have the, I don't need to go. So basically, when your students using VoiceSpice, they click on record, and this is all online on the web. They click on record. They don't have to download anything. They record their audio. After they finish, there will be a button, stop, okay, for stopping the audio. They stop the recording, and immediately after they stop the recording, they receive a link, and they can copy and they can paste that link to anything. So for example, if you want them to record a message and send the link to you on WhatsApp, they can record the message, stop the recording, get the link and paste onto WhatsApp. And then you have evidence of what they recorded. You can go and listen to the recording. Why do I like VoiceSpice? Because students don't have to download anything. They do it all online. Just go to the website and do it. Okay, that's a big advantage. So very good for speaking practice, especially asynchronously. You as a teacher can also use VoiceSpice to record the reading of a text, give the link to the students so that they can listen to you reading the text, if you want to do that. So, but of course, you can also do it on your phone and other types of devices, right? Audio devices. And so once you finish recording, you get this screen that gives you a save button. And once you save, you put the title, they can put their name, they don't need to put comments. and then you get the link, and they can copy this link here and they can share. That's it. Okay. Later on, you can go and listen to a sample recording at home. So Google Docs, I particularly like for practicing writing because students can make comments. What I do when I'm teaching usually is if I give them a writing task, I create one folder on Google Docs, and I ask all the students to put their file in that folder. Of course, that folder will be shared with all my students. And then I put them in peer editing groups. So I make groups of 3 to 4 students where they have to read each other's texts and they have to leave comments on the texts. Why is this good? Because every time a student leaves a comment on somebody else's text, the comment appears with the student's name. So I can go in and I can check if they actually did it. And I can actually read the comments that they left because all their documents are also shared with me. So that's a good advantage that's an advantage of Google Drive, right? So I definitely recommend it. And Flipgrid, just to finish here, is an alternative to VoiceSpice if you want to do video instead of audio. For example, the students have to record a video describing their holiday plan. They could record on Flipgrid. You basically, you give them, you create an activity and they receive a code. So you give them that code and they go they record a video and they get a code and they can share this code with you and you can watch the recording. Okay, so they record the video, copy the code, the link, and share the link with the teacher, and then the teacher can watch the video that they recorded. Again, Flipgrid is free, VoiceSpice is free. WordWall, part of it is free, and if you want more resources, you have to pay. But I've only used the free resources so far. Okay. Somebody raised their hand. Do you have any questions or?
Yes, we actually have another question on the chat box, Mr. Fabio. Let me see. It's from Miss Rina Kania Aini. Based on your experience, how is the best way to deliver a synchronous session on the expression material?
On what type of material?
Expression material. Maybe we can invite Miss Rina to explain more.
Yeah. What do you mean by expression material? If you feel free to come online and speak to us and explain what you mean by that, and then I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah. Hello, Miss Rina Kania. Please unmute yourself first. Okay, thank you. Hello, Miss.
Yeah. Is that clear? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what I mean by expression is, you know that English is second language in Indonesia. I mean, foreign language in Indonesia. So it's not really easy to teach expression, especially some of the expression that we have. Well, we have this kind of competency, that's our basic competence that our government lead us to deliver, to teach to the students. So in one of the basic competence, we have expression material, such as in the 8th grader of the secondary level, we have a basic competence of how to express agreement or disagreement, like that. Well, as far as I deliver the expression, is not as easy as I think, I guess.
So I do think that you know, this expressing agreement or disagreement, for example, let me give you this example. There's a lot of ways to practice that. You could practice that in speaking. You could practice that in writing, right? So the way you're going to develop your lesson in your sequence really depends on what skill you're focusing on and what you want your students to express. Of course, the first thing you need to do if you want them to express agreement or disagreement is to teach them what it is and the language that they need to express it, right? I agree or disagree, I'm in favor, I'm against, etc., etc. You could do a practice online. You could do a practice online, for example, where you show a statement and you get volunteers to express, I agree with this because, I disagree with this because, okay? So you get some topics, so you put them online, or make a statement, okay? So for example, let me give a simple example. Okay, let's say if you write a statement in the classroom, every child needs a cell phone. Do you agree or disagree? So a student could say, "Yo, I agree because," "No, I disagree because." So they could practice this live online. You could give them a list of statements that they could practice in small groups or breakout rooms, okay? Or even if you want to, so you can do it live, like you can call on different students to express agreement or disagreement. They can do it with you, they can do it in breakout rooms. A further practice, if you want to do it asynchronously, give them a list of statements and ask them to record on Flipgrid, on VoiceVice, record an audio responding to each of the statements. For example, do you agree that young children should have cell phones? No, I disagree because, and then they record the statement. And then you listen to those statements, okay? Because the expression, when you say expressive language in English, because every time we are speaking, we are expressing something. We are expressing opinions, we are expressing emotions. And how do we create opportunities for students to express? Well, create opportunities for them to produce language, to practice either speaking or writing. And practice whatever it is you are teaching. If it's agreement or disagreement, if it's general opinions, if it's contrasting and comparing information, whatever it is, okay? Is it helpful?
Indeed, yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we also have a question from Miss Nisrina Aulia Nur. How many asynchronous worksheets can we give in 1 week, in your opinion?
It really depends. I'm not a big advocate for too much homework. I do think that, again, for too much work activities or home activities. I do think that I always try to give my students what I think is enough. Okay, what do my students need to learn? What is absolutely necessary for them to learn and master this? So I will do the activities. I try to be very conscious of it when I created my sequence. For example, I try to create a sequence in my Google Classroom that students could do in about half an hour to 40 minutes. Because I don't want my students spending a lot more time on this. Because I do think that if my synchronous session is about 45 to 50 minutes, okay, if my students spend another 30 minutes at home preparing for something, that's good enough, right? Or doing an asynchronous. Now, if the whole lesson is asynchronous, I may do a sequence that is maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour. That's okay if we're not meeting online. But if I'm doing a hybrid sequence, I would probably plan for maybe 20 to 30 minutes asynchronously and the rest synchronously. If the activity is all asynchronous, then I will do a longer lesson. But again, that would depend on how much content you need to cover, right? And how much your students need to practice in order to actually learn that concept. That's all I can say. And I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fabio. And maybe this will be the last question for today. It's actually from Miss Ida Ayu. It's a very, oh yeah, sorry.
Can I just ask for one thing before I answer this question?
Okay.
And I'll leave it on the screen. I would just like, I know that Mentari has a survey already, but if people could just answer this one, it's just for me as to get some feedback on my next presentation. It's just one little question, okay?
Okay.
There's no players here. I will show that. Okay, let me get the question first and I'll prepare this. Let me stop sharing.
It's from Miss Ida Ayu. It's actually the earlier, he has already asked this earlier and some participants has already shared their opinion about this. Well, actually, it's about how to make primary students more interested in the online class because they are very different with secondary students. So let us hear from you about that.
Mm-hmm. Primary students. Okay, so I do think that for primary students, in my opinion, I do think that probably the size of your synchronous lessons or may have to be a little longer, at least in the beginning, the amount of time you spend teaching synchronous. Because if you want to introduce asynchronous teaching to primary students, you need to teach them in a lot more slowly, because they may not be so disciplined or even know how to do it without their parents' help. So I do think sometimes you're going to have to get, even in a beginning session, you're going to have to get the students and the parents online to teach them, okay, this is what I want them to do. My goal is that they do it by themselves, not with your help. So in the beginning, I want you, parent, to help them, but later on, do it by yourself. And I do think it's an important thing to be able to do. And when you do synchronous lessons or synchronous sequences, try to keep your activities short. Okay, when I was teaching in a regular classroom, when you look at research today, it says that, okay, students, they can pay, depending on the age, they can pay attention if you're speaking for like 15 minutes as a teacher, for explaining something for 15, 20 minutes. After that, they'll start losing their attention. So when I was teaching in a classroom, I always tried to change what I was doing every 15 minutes, do a different activity. So if I had to teach something that was 30 minutes, I would teach 15 minutes of it, do a practice, and then teach another 15 minutes of it. Because that practice worked as a break, right? I could do a practice in small groups or something as a break. If I'm doing teaching online, I'll probably keep my activities to 5 minutes, sometimes 10, if it's a long activity. So do something for 5 or 10 minutes and change, do something else. And do something else for 5 or 10 minutes and change and do something else. Because the more activities you incorporate, the more exciting the class will be, because the students will be looking forward to what's coming. Instead of knowing, oh my gosh, I'm looking at this slide for 10 minutes already, and I know I'm gonna have to be looking at it for another 15. And that will get them tired, and that will get them to lose their focus, okay? So thank you, those of you. Remember who are answering my feedback question. Remember, this is anonymous. I will never know who answered what. So this is just for me to get some feedback. And please be honest, okay? You're not gonna hurt me. Don't worry about it, be honest. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fabio. And educators, since it's already the time, I have to end the Q&A session. But don't worry, if you still have any question, you can deliver your question or idea to the written email and WhatsApp number on the screen. And as we can see on the chat box, there are so many enthusiast teachers here who would like to share things to the other teachers. I would like to say that actually for today's participant, we already have a WhatsApp group. So for those who haven't joined to the WhatsApp group, you can chat our WhatsApp number displayed on the screen. Silakan Bapak Ibu, sebenarnya kita sudah ada grup WhatsApp ya untuk peserta hari ini. Dan apabila Bapak Ibu belum bergabung di grup tersebut, Bapak Ibu dapat chat langsung ke WhatsApp number yang sudah tertera di layar. And we are very happy to see the enthusiastic teacher here. Dan di grup WhatsApp tersebut, silahkan Bapak Ibu juga bisa saling berbagi sehingga grup tersebut tetap dapat hidup ya. Silahkan Bapak Ibu dapat dicatat terlebih dahulu. And also, I would like to say thank you very much for Mr. Fabio for a wonderful and informative session about successful online learning. And by Mr. Fabio's explanation, we received many teaching ideas and also strategies to be applied in our online learning. So thank you very much, Mr. Fabio, for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Fabio.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity. It's been great to share with you. Thank you.
Yes, that's
Thank you for sharing also. Yeah.
And in case some of you haven't filled the attendance form, now displayed on the screen is the link for attendance form. Kindly spend 1 minute to fill it in. Silakan Bapak Ibu yang belum mengisi formulir kehadiran, silakan untuk mengisinya sekarang. Bisa dilakukan sekarang ya Bapak Ibu, hanya untuk yang belum mengisi saja. Dan setelah ini saya juga akan membagikan link untuk materi hari ini. Silakan. Who would like to have today's materials or files, you may download it through the link on the screen or please check on the chat box. I already sent the link here. Silakan dapat dicatat terlebih dahulu. Please take a note of the links. So you can access it later after this session has ended. Silakan Bapak Ibu dapat dicatat terlebih dahulu untuk link-linknya, sehingga dapat di-download nanti ya setelah sesi ini selesai. And then Bapak Ibu please kindly spend 2 minutes to fill in our feedback online form. The link and the QR code are displayed on the screen and also on the chat box. This is a very important. Bapak Ibu, please access the online form and make sure to fill it carefully on your full name and active email address. Bapak Ibu, sekarang sudah tertera di layar ya link untuk umpan balik dan juga sudah ada di chat box. Mohon diperhatikan saat penulisan nama lengkap juga alamat email aktif. Kami berikan waktu 2 menit untuk mengisi. Silakan Bapak Ibu. Okay, we already have some responses here. And thank you very much for your feedback, Bapak Ibu. It will be a good contribution for us in improving our quality and also to serve you better in the future. And you will have your e-certificate delivered to your email. And now, educators, let's have a photo session together. So please turn on the camera or video so we can show our smiles and happy faces. And my colleague will help me lead the photo session. Please, Mas Ludi, kindly help us.
Halo Bapak Ibu, boleh tolong dinyalakan videonya? Kita akan foto bersama ya. Ayo Bapak Ibu, gayanya. Ayo, siap-siap. Gayanya Bapak Ibu, 1, 2.
Smile.
Oke, lagi.
Another pose.
Another pose. 1, 2. One more.
One more.
1, 2. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mas Ludi, for the photo session, and the photos will be sent to the WhatsApp group. Well, thank you very much, dear teachers and all the participants. You were very great today. Thank you for joining us and see you later. You may leave the Zoom meeting room now. Thank you.